Michael, welcome to California, bro.
Thanks, man.
And to the Bay Area specifically. Well, have you been out to San Francisco before, or is this your first real official trip?
No, so I've been here a few times. My business partner at the meatball shop, who's also my childhood friend, he came out here right after high school and started working in all the fancy restaurants out here, like the fifth floor, the slanted door.
The fifth floor? No kidding. That's wild. My brother was a server there, or like an expediter there for like a bunch of years. I wonder if they crossed paths. What's his name?
Dan Holzman.
Oh, I gotta ask my brother.
You gotta ask him, because he was a hothead then too.
Really? And my brother's like girlfriend for that long stretch worked in the kitchen back there at the fifth floor.
Yeah, so that would have been probably like, it was, I would say it was probably somewhere between 2000 and 2003, something like that.
That could have been right around that time. Anyway. Yeah,
so he worked out here, and then he ended up actually working with Nate Appleman, who's a chef out here. Mm-hmm. And he was working at this restaurant, SPQR.
Yep.
No, he was working at A16.
A16, yeah.
And then Nate and Dan opened up SPQR together.
Cool.
And it didn't work out. But I came out here. That was the first time I came out here. And then I had a TV show called Food Porn.
Right.
From 2016 to 2018, 19. And we came out here and did a bunch of restaurants out here. So, and then I've been out a few times here and there. I was out here not long ago, probably about a year and change ago for something. But the truth of the matter is that I really haven't spent the right amount of time in Northern California to really absorb this, like. Yeah.
So just from what you were sharing with us, like the listener, there's a lot of people that listen that have never been to Northern California. They've never been to San Francisco, but they hear about California. Maybe they've been to LA. Quick summary. How is it different up here, or is it different? Is there a different vibe to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area than Southern California?
Oh my gosh. It couldn't be more different. It couldn't be more different. I mean, I think Northern California has this. I mean, look, San Francisco is a real city, first of all, right? It's a real city. There's the BART, you can walk places, there's streets, Los Angeles is not that, right?
Yeah.
Downtown LA has that, but really Los Angeles is a big stretched out city. So is San Francisco, but San Francisco, it's actually like a really beautiful city. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could be and the other thing that people should know is that, like, it's very hilly. It's like a city built into a mountainside. Yeah. And so walking San Francisco for a guy like me, and probably for a guy like you, is awesome, because you're like, all right, man, I'm just on my day. I'm just walking, but I'm looking up this massive incline. Yeah. And so I'm getting like fun walking steps in. It's not just like walking in a city. But then you get to the top of this street, and you look to your left, you can look to your right, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, I was walking around yesterday, kind of like, it was like 4 to 5 o'clock, and it's starting to get dark early now. And man, like, I got to the top of this street, and it was at the top of the hill, and I just looked out to the water, and it was like a breathtaking view. Like a breathtaking view. You don't get that in Los Angeles. And I also just think in general, just like the characters and, the people, this is like a wholesome place. It feels like a wholesome place. And not that LA is not, but LA is definitely, LA kind of reminds me of New York in the sense that there's this edge that keeps you on your toes in New York and LA. And it just feels a lot calmer and a lot more serene in this part of the country, this part of the state.
Cool.
That's kind of my general take.
So that's the plug. Everyone, come on out to. When you come to California, you're not going to the same state when you go to San Francisco and when you go to LA. It's very different places.
Very different.
Both have their perks and their there are upsides, but as somebody who was born and raised here, this is like backyard for me. This is certainly my comfort zone and preference up here.
Yeah, and also, you know, some of the greatest restaurants in the world are in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And you're super close to some of the greatest ski mountains. You're obviously close to the Pacific.
Wine
and then
country,
you're like
if
wine
you're
country.
into
You're
that.
right. You're just south of Napa, right? So
Yeah.
like, I just think that if you're thinking about going on a vacation or you want to explore a part of the United States where you can get just like a bunch of everything without any attitude, San Francisco, a good spot.
The San Francisco Bay Area Tourism Company and Association. That's our plug for the day. The sponsor of the show. No, but let's get to the real meat of this conversation, which is first how we know each other. I think we met a number of years back. It was just a coincidence that we were in the same place at the same time for like a Lululemon event back in New York.
Oh, that was right. That
Yeah.
was like 2018, 19, something like that.
My wife Megan was with us, so we met you technically back then, but then we got to know each other over the last couple of years through fitness, through your company that you started, Creatures of Habit, which we talk about here on the podcast from time to time. But your story of how your story is people haven't heard it, and I want to give it a little room on this podcast, but your story of recovery and then how this company came to be, Creatures of Habit, that I'm a big fan of, and what the mission of it is. So go back as far as you'd like and just give us a little bit of a story of how you came to find your way on this path in your life.
Sure. Thanks for giving me that space. I have now been in recovery just over 20 years. And when I say recovery, I mean sobriety. And I grew up in New York City. I grew up in Manhattan, sort of right in the heart of it. And those, I mean, I think even still to this day, but in the 80s and the 90s, I'm a 1980 baby. So I was born in the 80s and I kind of grew up in the 90s. New York City was truly the epicenter of innovation and culture in the United States. And you could sit on, you can go down to Soho, and I used to do this all the time as a kid, and you could sit on a stoop or sit on a bench and just people watch for hours and hours and hours and just experience all walks of life from all, places on the planet. And so as a kid, escapism became a big part of who I was because I grew up in a household that was pretty rough and tumble. My dad was a very abusive guy, angry guy, physically sick, emotionally sick, and mentally ill. Unfortunately, I mean, it's just the truth. And so growing up around that, him and my mother were fighting constantly. My father would take a lot of his anger out on me, spared my sister, which I'm grateful for the most part. But my dad and I had a really, really tough relationship. And now being a parent to two young boys who I love with every single cell in my body, 10x, it hurts me even more to think about how my father could have conducted the way he did. Because I can't even imagine saying what he said to me at the same age that my kids are now. Like crazy. And ultimately it got violent between the two of us once I felt like I'd had enough, and I was at an age where I was probably 11, 12 years old, where I just said, F this, I'm going to start fighting back physically. And then once that happened, child services got involved, and it just became, it was very, very chaotic. Mm-hmm. And then his mental illness, as he got older, got more and more severe. He became a hoarder. So my apartment was already very small. He started piling things up, and there was it was a very traumatic sort of home. Mm. So escaping was my thing. So I would sleep over friends' houses. My mother worked and my father was completely absent in our lives in terms of being involved. So my mother just put me in after school programs, and I was a natural athlete. So I loved sport. So I totally dove into sport. I would sleep at the ice hockey rink, you know, when I could. I would tell my mom I was sleeping at a friend's house, and I would really just, you know, go down the ice hockey rink, try to get ice time with the older guys at like 11 o'clock at night. And then I would just sneak into the back and I would sleep there.
My biggest lesson from retiring as a competitive CrossFit athlete is focusing on how to stay healthy and strong for the rest of my life, not just right now. Everything I do in training now is for my future, and that's how I'm approaching fueling my body. What you do in the gym today and what you put in your body today aren't just for right now. Every choice I make, including my hydration, is intentional to build brick by brick the future that I want to live.
When I was about 12, I had a friend who was a little bit older, and she went to a private school, so they had more access, and she introduced me to marijuana. And once that happened, my whole world changed. I fell in love with that kind of escapism, as opposed to like physically escaping to friends' houses or wherever. I just escaped into the drugs. And that's where, honestly, I feel like it saved my life, quite frankly, because I was definitely, I definitely had in those days, like I definitely had suicidal ideation, and I was already in therapy, and then I found the drugs, and it really, really helped me for a good probably 3 or 4 years. You know, I was the worst child in the planet. You know, like I wouldn't wish me on any parent at that stage of my life at 13 years old, being a full-fledged sort of drug user. I don't think I would call myself an addict at that point, because I was, you know, I still went to school, but at 15 years old, it got very bad at home. Child Services was threatening to put me in a foster care, and I just completely left. I moved out of my parents' house, and I was like a real street kid. And I always found myself in like actually nice situations. I never like had to sleep in a shelter or sleep on the street. I was always on someone's couch, or, you know, someone had an extra room, but I was basically just couch surfing until I got my own apartment when I was 18. That's when my addiction really started to kick in. And from like 15 to 23 is really a big blur for me, because I was totally engulfed in the throes of addiction. And I got into a lot of trouble. I did a lot of stupid things. I hated myself. And I didn't know who, I blamed myself, I think, for a lot of the stuff that happened in my childhood. I didn't know I had also been, you know, exposed to a sexual predator at a young age, who knew that I had come from a broken home, took me in as like, kind of like his kind of son. I was very young, and groomed me and ended up molesting me. I didn't realize that until I was into like my later teens, and that really sort of just turned the volume up on my drug addiction, my drug abuse. So anyway, long story short, it got really, really bad. And then I overdosed, and I was 23. My addiction had sort of migrated from, you know, in my early teens, sort of party drugs like acid and mushrooms and ecstasy, to, you know, cocaine and a lot of alcohol, and then ultimately pills and heroin. And all that other stuff, like I wasn't really doing the party drugs anymore, but the alcohol and the cocaine was still a big part of it. But I was really, you know, sort of started to step into that darker place with heroin. And I overdosed, and I didn't die. I'm here. But I knew that it was like I had a life or death decision to make. And I knew in my heart that I was capable of so much more. So many people would tap me on the shoulder and say, Mikey, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? You're dying. We're all watching you. We love you, you know? And then I would have my other group of friends that were like, right there with me. So I had to make this decision. And after I overdosed, I still struggled for a couple of weeks. But ultimately, I was brought to my knees and I asked for help. I reached out and I knew who to call. I called this woman, Karen, who was like an older sister to me for years. And I said, hey, I'm dying and I need help for real. Can you please? And I knew that she was sober. So she was dating a guy named Marcus, who was this really cool dude, probably 10 or 12 years older than me. And I didn't know him, but I knew that she was sober and I knew that she was dating someone that was sober. So she immediately introduced me to Marcus. This happened so quick. I called her, she called Marcus. Marcus was with me within a couple of hours. And he sat down with me for the first time in my life, really, that I thought somebody was like interested in what I had to say. And he sat down and listened to me tell him what my life was like for 4 hours. And this guy, handsome dude, covered in tattoos, Muay Thai kickboxing competitor. He was like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to walk you through this. And that was the last day I drank or used drugs. And that was August 2nd of 2004. And from that day forward, my life has been devoted to fitness and nutrition and wellness. And it was because this guy basically said, I'm going to give you, he's like, you don't have to do anything I tell you to do. But he's like, if you listen to me, if you take the suggestions that I'm going to offer you, you'll never have to feel the way you do now. As a matter of fact, you can live a life way beyond anything that you would have ever imagined, because I'm going to help you to start putting yourself first in your life. And that's going to come through fitness, nutrition, and then eventually mindfulness. But he basically wrote a plan for me. When we were sitting there at the restaurant, he sat down with a piece of paper and he said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to wake up as early as you can in the morning. I don't know what time that looks like for you, but just know I'd like you to wake up as early as you can. As soon as you get up, make your bed, go into the bathroom, wash your face, brush your teeth, put on your contact lenses, take a piss, and then I'm going to ask you to pray and ask God for help. I don't care if you believe in God. I don't care if you don't believe in God. I don't care if you think you know who you're talking to or you don't know who you're talking to. I'm not asking you to do this for any religious purpose. I'm asking you to do this because you need to start asking for help, and you have no idea how to ask for help until today. And so this is going to be a daily reminder for you. Get into a humble position and say, God, help me. I want to stay sober. Help me. And then right when you're done with that, put on a pair of sneakers and get out of your apartment and go for a walk. And that could be a block. That could be 10 blocks. That could be a mile. That could be 10 miles. It could be a walk or a run. I just want you to move your body immediately in the beginning of your day. And then right when you're done with that, come home and make yourself a big bowl of oatmeal. You can add whatever you want to it, but it's an easy, accessible, satiating, and healthy way to just start putting positivity into your body. Nutritionally, it'll be a nutritional win. Most of the things that you've put into your body for the last 11 years have been totally poison. And so we're going to kind of change that out the gate. And then when you're done with that, you have your coffee, have some water, go over to a sober community meeting, raise your hand, let them know who you are and why you're there. And then when you're done with that, you're going to beeline it down to the gym, and I am going to train you. And I'm going to teach you about integrity and commitment and discipline. And I'm going to teach you how to get back up. And then we're going to train for 2 hours, and you're going to hate it, and it's going to hurt. But I promise you, it's going to be worth it. And then after you're done there, have some chicken and broccoli. You can get chicken and broccoli at most places. If you have to go to the Chinese restaurant and get their chicken and broccoli, do that. And then take a nap, go to work, have chicken and broccoli again, get home, drop on your knees right before you hit your bed, say, thank you, God, close your eyes and go to sleep, rinse and repeat. And that was the plan he introduced to me. And that is pretty much the plan that I follow to today.
Wow.
And I got to say, man, my life is like a dream for me. You know, there's obviously moments where I doubt myself, and I've got my insecurities, and it's hard as hell because I've been lucky enough to have these pretty big challenges that I've put myself in front of. But when I step back, like I did yesterday, walking around San Francisco, and think about where my life was and where it is now, I owe everything to my commitment to discipline in fitness and nutrition and mindfulness.
Wow. That's incredible story. And you've told it probably hundreds of times, maybe more than that. But the way you are able to reflect on just the pieces that shaped the dark sides of your journey, and then the positive and the light side of your journey. There's so many lessons in there that I'm just hearing, and I'm like, man, that applies to so many people, even if they're not in what would be labeled traditionally as an addiction. There's people that are addicted to behaviors and patterns in their life that are destructive, that they are desperate to shake and to get out of. And some of them are health related. They're overweight, they overeat, they are stuck in a pattern of just not putting themselves first and just not taking care of their health, and devoting too much of their time and energy to a career or to work or to something that ultimately won't matter for them, and their physical, mental, and emotional health is suffering. And this like frame shift of like, no, you're going to put yourself first. You're going to make your physical health like this foundation, this habit that you attend to every single day. That's going to be the foundation by which many other things grow. And trust and faith in something where you're asking for help and you're looking outside of yourself for, answers, and you're putting your trust in someone. So many people just like aren't ready to do that. And, or they've never even considered that they need that in their life. It's really remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, when I think back on it, look, fitness and nutrition can also become obsessive and addictive, right? I know I've been there for sure with some of the ventures and, competitive journeys I've been on. But there's no way around it. I will take training hard and eating well as a life raft all day long over hating myself, wanting to die, and poisoning myself with drugs and alcohol from morning to night. I'll just, all day. And, I've had to figure out how to calibrate like my balance with fitness and stuff. But ultimately, it's given me, I think the one thing that I can point to for eating well and being mindful of it, moving my body every day, some days harder than others, there's a level of confidence that you're given by taking those actions that are hard to achieve anywhere else, right? Because the beauty of nutrition and fitness, and for me, meditation and prayer, is that I can absolutely 100% control whether I do it or don't. And every single time I do it, every time, it's a win. Every single time. And I think humans are wired to want to win. And I'm not talking about win the race or be the best, because I know a lot of people that like to accomplish things but are not gunning to be the best in the world. But if you're able to set yourself up with a list of controllable wins on a daily basis, from my experience, you can take on anything.
Yeah, it's I'd say like without fail, every time I encounter a client or somebody approaches me wanting to make a positive change for their health and fitness, they're in a bad mindset to start with. And that's the product of repeatedly making the less positive choice, or, engaging in the unhealthy behavior. Not like, doesn't have to be poisoning themselves with drugs or alcohol. It could be just choosing the bad food option, or deciding to not go for the walk, or, saying, oh, I'll start the gym next week. But they've done it enough times repeatedly that they have just encountered so many losses in a row that they just don't believe in themselves. And then they're like asking, like, how do I change? How do I get the mindset back? Like, how do I get motivated? How do I get inspired to do the hard thing, which is like making the healthy choice? And I often say, like, well, you got to go earn that through repeated positive behaviors. And I love how Marcus framed it for you, which was like, just get out and move your body. It could be a block, or it could be 10 blocks. It could be a mile. It could be 10 miles. It doesn't have to have an objective outcome that you need to meet. It's something, whereas yesterday you were doing nothing. And then that 10 days in a row of just getting out and moving your body, that's 10 instances of you having a win, and then building back some mindset that the past 11 years crushed. And that's how we talk to people about movement and about fitness, whether they're coming out of the throes of addiction, or they're just like, oh man, the last 10 years it got away from me, and I put on 20 pounds, and I just haven't done anything, and I don't know how to start, and I'm not super motivated to do it, but I think I need to change.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the other thing that I was taught in those early days is that there's real freedom in structure, like real freedom in structure. And I obviously needed my day completely planned out because of how severe my addiction was. If I had any amount of time that was just like,
yeah, what should I do right now?
Like open to discussion, there's a chance that I could have made a poor decision. And so he very clearly knew what he was doing in like listing out what my day was going to look like. And so anybody that's listening to this, if you are struggling with any kind of addiction, whether it's alcohol and drugs, food, spending, gambling, like I would just say, use that structure that I went through, right? Mm-hmm. Like build your day so that you're able to have moments, very fewer moments where you have to think about what to do. Mm-hmm. But for other people that are not battling addiction, just simply want to want to change their mental, physical, and maybe for some spiritual health, I always say just start with one thing, right? Like it's really, really difficult. And we all know that, New Year's comes around and everybody's like, that's it. I'm quitting smoking. I'm going to the gym. I'm walking 10,000 steps a day. I'm eating a meal plan. Blah, 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 right? And we all also know that the statistic is like 95% of people that make New Year's resolutions fail by February. And so one thing that I know to be true is that if you're struggling with food, for instance, don't try to change everything today. Choose one meal. Change one meal for a month. And that is achievable, it's attainable, and it will give you, so I kind of, this is something that I've sort of figured out along my journey, and it kind of just came to me not that long ago. But I call it the 3 C's. Commitment is the first C, which is arguably the hardest one, right? Anything that you want to do that is going to be out of your comfort zone or different or potentially great, you're gunning for greatness, it is going to require a pretty significant level of commitment, if not like a large level of commitment, right? The beauty of commitment is, and there's no pill you can take, there's no switch you can flip. Like it's you just gonna, if you really want it, you're gonna just have to commit, and you're gonna have to fight for it. You're gonna have to fight. The days that you don't want to do it, the days where it's 8 o'clock at night, and you've eaten healthy, and you're dying, your body's tired, you've got the Netflix going, you really just want that pint of ice cream, but you're on this journey. That's where the commitment becomes really hard. Where you got to say, okay, I've got a choice to make. I'm going to take it or I'm not. It sucks to not take it. But I promise you that you being able to not do it is breeding the next C, which is confidence. Commitment breeds confidence. It just does. The more you do it, the better you get. It's not monotonous because you're getting better all the time. People are like, oh my God, you do the same. Like, people roll their eyes at me. They're like, oh, you do the same thing all the time. You eat the same food. You do the same kind of training, Oh God, this guy. Oh, you're one of those guys, huh? Real creature of habit. And for me, I'm like, yeah, it gets better and better every time for me. And so with confidence, you can start to introduce other potential habits that you'd like to conquer. You start getting a little bolder. It sort of bleeds into all areas of your life. And that's why I always say, for me, like, I could be sitting down with a CEO or, a 16-year-old kid that wants to get in shape. It doesn't matter what you're gunning for. If you're in a tough place, from my experience, always go back to fitness. Always go back to how are you moving your body and what are you putting into your body? Because you can build a foundation there that can be applied to anything in life. And not only can, once you understand that, not only can it be applied to anything in life, but if you start with fitness and nutrition, you're just going to feel better and you're going to look better. And that is going to increase your confidence level. And then once you have this level of confidence where and I want to just clarify, there's a big difference between confidence and ego. Ego is actually the part of the brain that is going to try to derail your commitment. Ego is like, I want to be as safe and as comfortable as possible. And so if I feel threatened, AKA you walking into the gym and it's going to be hard, I, as the ego, am going to try to convince you that you just don't need it. We're good enough. We don't need this. We don't need it. Or that ego is also trying to refrain you from getting hurt or failing. So if you're doing something really hard, your ego is going to say, you're not good enough for this. Just throw in the towel, man. You don't need to do this. They're all better than you. That's the ego. Confidence is the exact opposite. Confidence is, I know how to do this. I've been doing this for the last month. I'm seeing a difference in my physique. I feel better. I've got more energy. I want more of this. I'm going to start doing more of this. And that's the confidence piece. And then the beauty of confidence is, over time, confidence inherently introduces courage into your life. And that's where you can start taking risk, like bigger ones. And there's a level of risk that also comes in with the commitment piece. But the risks that I'm talking about are kind of the risks that I've taken. Starting my own business, getting married, having children, feeling like after my childhood, I was terrified. Yeah. I was terrified to be a dad and I wanted to be one so bad, but I was so scared because I was like, am I going to emulate my father? Like, is that, you hear that all the time, like, oh, well, he was that way with his kids because his father was that way with his kids. Like, is that going to be me?
Yeah.
I didn't have a blueprint, but, thank God I'm not anywhere, like, couldn't be further from them.
I hear the way that you parent and the way you talk about your kids and your family. And yeah, it's amazing to hear that you came from the childhood that you did and that you have brought a whole different, evolved level of love, care, empathy, and parenting to your kids and your family. It's remarkable. I love the commitment, confidence, courage, the 3 C's. And I think a take-home lesson today is just committing to something small and getting and stacking those wins. Build confidence. You can take bigger risks next time. You can commit to something harder and stack wins there, build more confidence, breeds more courage, move on to the next thing. And it can be as simple as getting out for a walk first thing in the morning. It can be as simple as changing that one meal instead of your whole entire, food meal plan, every macro, going full keto, intermittent fast, do the whole thing. Like, I'm sure that this episode will air sometime early December, and it'll be on people's radars to be thinking about what their New Year's resolutions are going to be. And this is just the perfect message to be sending to everybody as they start to get really ambitious about what 2025 can look like from a health and fitness perspective. And it could be, dream big, have your vision board. But when it comes to what you're going to do on day one, start small and then let this cycle of the 3 C's build and build and build throughout the course of the year.
Yeah. And I also think just to propose a game plan, right? If you are hell bent on having a New Year's resolution, great. That's great. Go for it. But don't make it all happen on January 1st, right? Say, okay, so for January, my goal is to lose 10 pounds for, 2025, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40, 50 pounds. January, you start with breakfast. And all you worry about is, I'm going to try to walk in the morning, and I'm going to change my breakfast. February, I'm going to try to get 10,000 steps a day in February, and I'm also going to change lunch. So it's going to be breakfast and lunch in February. March, see how I'm feeling. Maybe March is breakfast and lunch, and Monday through Friday, clean dinners. On the weekends, I have at it. And by the way, if you can change your breakfast and your lunch, and then 4 dinners a week, and 3 of those dinners are choose your own adventure and have a blast, and you're walking 10,000 steps a day, maybe in March you start picking up some weights, you're a changed person.
Yeah, for sure. Well, great conversation. Any last things you want to say to the audience on this particular topic in your journey?
I will just say, your habits will make you or break you. And I've lived on both sides of the tracks, and when you hear the word habit, a lot of us think it's got a negative connotation. Habit. It's typically it's rare that people are like, yeah, man, I got this great habit. Most of the time it's like, man, I got this really bad habit. I'm trying to lick. I'm trying to beat this thing. I got to break this habit. And so I just, with Creatures of Habit and the brand, the goal for me is to really sort of reframe habit. And yes, we, sell nutritional products, but ultimately the brand as a whole is trying to say, our habits will dictate our happiness or lack thereof.
Michael, where would you like people to go and find you if they want to reach out to you or connect with you, or do you want to direct them to the brand page? Or
yeah, you could follow me anywhere. I'm at Michael Chernow all over, at all the interweb places.
Yes.
And Creatures of Habit with a K is Creatures of Habit is also at Creatures of Habit everywhere, and then creaturesofhabit.com is our website.
Right on. All right. I appreciate you for being here, for speaking, for sharing wisdom and your journey. And thank y'all for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.